So come on in. We're going to welcome Sean and Kevin from Cutting Edge Solutions.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Yeah, brother.
Dude.
Yes, dude. I hear we're going to be hanging out on Friday too.
Yeah.
Kev? Good to see you.
You're probably one of the first people I met.
So if you guys want to kind of take the
We're gonna
ends,
get
and you guys got
When's the
hand
podcast?
mics
Oh, yeah. Love it.
that are yours to navigate.
Me too, man.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
I'm
Yeah.
good, man. So here, grab a mic.
Cool.
I think you're right there, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty much what we decided. It
And-
seems like good for video purposes.
Yeah. And we're just kind of shooting the breeze about what's going on and, you know, telling the story of MJ BizCon that it's been going on for 10 years now.
Yep, this is the 10th year anniversary. Here we are doing it again.
It's my first MJ Biz too.
Wow, really?
I know, isn't that crazy?
That is a little crazy.
So
That's
cool.
surprising.
I was always doing other events. It's crazy.
Well, we were just talking about that in a little live segment that we just did where, you know, even when this thing has gotten as big as it was in 2019, the last time they did it, there's still a ton of people in this industry that are big players that still haven't made it. And there is this thing that where, you know, it's so new for this industry that's been, you know, traditionally in the shadows, you know, to do an expo like this. It's still something that people are still just kind of testing the waters out and putting their feet in and seeing if, you know, what they think about it. So welcome, man. I'm glad you finally made it, dude.
For sure.
Hell yeah, it's awesome.
And yeah, it's interesting walking around seeing all these different companies that I've never seen before. And this is like Las Vegas itself is a place where everyone comes out of the woodworks, and it's cool to see new innovations, new products, and you know the same old faces too, of course.
I agree. I feel like every time I come here and I get away from whatever it is what we're doing at the booth and whatever, you know, walking around, every year I get reminded that there's never a point in this industry where you feel like you're comfortably at a place of knowing everything or calling yourself a master grower. There's always some new stuff coming out that's about to blow my mind. And it's unfortunate that when you're here for work purposes, we don't always get to dive into the actual trade show and get enough time to walk around and see all the booths that the actual attendees do.
Well, it's really cool. There's so many experts in each little niche, but it's so hard to be a true industry-wide expert these days with such a diverse flow of products and techniques and all of this stuff. It's really hard to have a great comprehensive grasp on the entire scope of the industry. So you're seeing people really hone in and specialize. I am the lighting guy. I am the ventilation guy. I am the extract guy. And really being focused, and if you pay attention to those experts, you can kind of get a little bit of a balance, and that's what we're trying to do here. You know, we're so entrenched in the cultivation side, being with Royal Gold, you guys being with Cutting Edge.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we kind of keep our eyes on the prize, but keep up with what's going on in the industry, because in cultivation, it's advising all the other portions. Like, are you cultivating for terpene profile? Are you cultivating for THC content? Are you cultivating hemp, CBD? Like, there's so many different things. Like, Kevin, you're in Tennessee, so you see a lot of a different side of the industry than we see in the West Coast. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in cultivation world in Tennessee.
Oh yeah. Well, tuning back to kind of the everybody getting in on their niche and finding their specialty and going 100% into that. That's where you see the most successful companies, the ones that are, you know, playing to what they know, consulting with their existing base, finding new customers and going that route. And some of the companies that try to do it all are the ones that don't survive. So you see a lot of that, and it's nice to you know, play on each other's brands and build a community versus, you know, try to create a one-man show. Cultivation side of the eastern and central U.S. Unfortunately, Tennessee's not blowing up on the indoor and craft cannabis scene. The hemp industry's blowing up. We've got, I think, 3,200 cultivation license out there, unlimited plant count. You know, that's a crazy wild world with a lot of fluctuations in you know, price per pound and biomass and everything. So a lot of people are scaling back or you know, toning it down to be more in a safe zone rather than, you know, doing 60 acres and having to supply a 30-man labor crew and everything. A lot of people are toning it back and going more greenhouse and craft style cultivation. In the central United States right now, we're seeing our biggest growth in areas like Missouri and Illinois and Florida, and then obviously Michigan and up into the Northeast. But it's nice to see some of these new markets go live in the central U.S., like Illinois per se, where they have home cultivation, they have commercial cultivation, and then they, the culture is really starting to evolve there. And it's kind of, on the home cultivation side, takes me back to Michigan 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, it's in its infancy there.
Yes. So we're seeing a lot of energy, a lot of positive community growth, and just a lot of really good things coming out of the Midwest and the central U.S. in those markets. Missouri is one just like that, where they have a really healthy home cultivation model for caregivers and stuff. So the retail market's healthy. The culture and the community of the home growers is healthy, and then you also have the big corporations and commercial facilities coming in to do large scale production. So we're really excited to see this cultivating in the Midwest, and then even down into the Southeast now with Virginia.
Virginia's gonna be big.
Yeah,
I love that there is some preservation of the medical small homegrown cultivation style in these new emerging markets, and that's something we've seen in a lot of markets that's kind of scary and really inhibits growth, is when the people at home aren't allowed to grow and there's very strict large scale regulation and all these hurdles and barriers to entry. And in Florida you have to have had a greenhouse license, an existing greenhouse business for
since
what,
the 80s.
Since the 80s,
40
for
years
30,
or something.
40 years to actually get one of the commercial
And they still don't
production.
have home grow, so
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's one of the most negative things that an emerging market can do, is limit in that way. You got to let people come in fresh. The people that have been adversely affected by uneven law enforcement, I think, is huge too. Like, there's no way that somebody that was busted for growing cannabis in the 90s can effectively participate in Florida, because there's no way they could have owned a business while they were serving time for having an ounce of pot.
Yeah.
So it's really these barriers to entry to the people that built the industry and fought for it for so long that it really kind of bothers me. And you see places like Illinois where you're allowed to do it on a small scale, and you see people excited about it. Missouri too, like you were saying. That speaks to us as cultivators, people who got into it with 3 plants or 2 lights and built our knowledge base from this like little germ of an idea of having to hide in a closet.
Yeah, I love that the aspect of actually the home grows getting put into the laws as these states come online. The medicinal aspect of consuming the plant is obviously it's a huge factor. The part of growing the plant, the connection with actually growing plants, is something that there's so many people that would never really take that on as a hobby, and there's something so healing and therapeutic and medicinal about getting into the cultivation of a plant and developing your relationship as a human to a plant or to your garden. And I think that there's such a fine balance there. And as these states come online and actually, push forward on the home grow, I think that is such a crucial thing for our society to get back into nature in that regard.
Absolutely.
So, Sean, you've been with Cutting Edge Solutions for a good long while now, but you've been in the industry for longer and across a kind of interesting expanse of different occupations and niches in the career.
Yeah, kind of floated around.
What are you seeing now? And like in your involvement in Cutting Edge Solutions, moving through these home grows, like give us a little bit of your perspective on the industry.
Yeah, so like 8 to 10 years ago, I was repping up in the Northwest, so Oregon and Washington, and it was right around the time when they were becoming legal, medical programs were rolling out, and I watched, just like you guys were talking about, the rise and fall of Washington, right? That was one of the biggest, most emerging markets, especially for home grows, and all of a sudden, licenses came out and home grow got canceled, and it destroyed a lot of, not just the cultivators, but our industry as a whole. Grow shops closed. Every single, like half of them closed up in the Seattle region, and that really destroyed the whole premise of why we wanted cannabis to be legal in the first place. We just wanted to not be messed with by the government, right? And now it's become regulated, not really legal in that sense. But, as the industry is evolving, do you think we'd be talking about legal cannabis in Missouri 5 years ago? So
No.
it's really cool to see that happening, but there's some good things happening, there's some bad things happening, and it's kind of all across the board. But the West Coast, the saturation is there for sure. You know, farmers are kind of hurting out there, and I think the national model is adding to that. You know, pounds from Oklahoma are going to New York City all the time, and that takes away from the California growers that have been doing it for 30, 40 years on heritage farms. I mean, for what it's worth, the same thing's happening all across the world now.
And that's something that I feel like, you know, it's going to lean heavily on, you know, federal legislation changing. You know, at some point I feel like the natural, you know, the ability to create a cheaper, well-crafted, you know, pound of cannabis in California or Oregon or Washington in these drier climates, you know, that might change the landscape, especially when you're talking about possibly shipping out, you know, overseas.
For sure, yeah. I was talking with Jose, our sales rep, who deals a lot with Mexico and Colombia for us. And a company in Colombia just signed a $60 million contract for exporting flower to the U.S. And they can produce flower for pennies on the gram.
Totally.
It's insane. And so you see these federal kind of hurdles slowing everything down, and really a big problem to me is that the federal government's failure to act and kind of support the greater national distribution model is dismantling the existing industry in California and Oregon and places that have been doing it. So by dragging their feet, they're creating an environment where all these legacy growers are going to be underwater by the time we open up to an export model within the United States of being able to throw a semi-load of cannabis from different growers in California out to New York, out to Michigan, out to these emerging markets. And if we can get some traction, get a lot of the people who are active in the community in the legislation, writing these state legislations, and then pushing it up the next level to their senators and pushing for the federal, we might be able to get over this hurdle and preserve some of this long-time legacy farming and influence of the people from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that built this industry that allowed us to be where we are today. We wouldn't be here talking about this in Las Vegas at a public convention center if it wasn't for those people that risked everything in all-out domestic warfare to produce cannabis for all of us to consume. So hats off to all you legacy growers and farmers.
Yeah, I mean, the Emerald Triangle as a brand is in demand worldwide. So if we had the ability to market that internationally, it would, you know, set Northern California up for a market that's sustainable for decades, if not, you know, a century.
Yeah, and everyone in California was so excited about, we're the Napa, we're up in Humboldt, we're in the Emerald Triangle, we're gonna be the Napa of cannabis, everybody wants this, but they can't get it.
Yeah. And that's kind of our focal point of moving into markets like Colombia right now. They are building their legislation on export. Right now they are exporting to Germany and the UK and these markets that only allow import into pharmacies and stuff. So it's unique seeing that happen in other parts of the world, and you know, we want to be a part of that.
Wow, yeah, and not being as familiar with the international as you guys are, I know you were just down in Colombia, you just did the big expo down in Mexico.
Yeah, in Mexico
Tell
City.
us more about that, because if the U.S. could get off its ass and get some legislation and we could be exporting to Spain and all these other places with our California cannabis, I think it would be a different world.
Totally. And what's really cool about Colombia and Mexico, especially the trade shows we went to, it looks like Northern California 15 years ago. Everybody wants knowledge. They're hungry for knowledge, and they want to do things the right way, because those two countries specifically don't trust GMOs. They don't trust Monsanto. They've banned Roundup. They've banned GMOs, and that's the same model they're using for cannabis. They want to do it the right way. But the people are super excited, and the legislature is a little different than it is here. Colombia is pretty much export only at this point, which is an interesting business model, but they only export to Canada and Germany, which you wouldn't think are the main places, but Germany has different pharmacies where they can basically make their own concoctions there. So whatever they bring in for material, they can then make a cannabis pill or make gummies in Germany. But even Germany, their cannabis legislation isn't there either. So it's like everyone's kind of chasing the tail of the next thing to happen, and we're doing the same thing in the States too. But it is cool to see people passionate and hungry for knowledge in these countries, for sure.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the Global Cannabis Coalition, and I don't know if I just coined something that doesn't exist yet. But that's what we need to see is, lawmakers from every country, from every state, especially that's legal, medical, or recreational, coming together to share a voice on a world scale to talk about how to get past the past 100 years of demonization of one of the most effective healing plants on the planet.
True that.
Yeah, I wish that we had 50 states that were actually united and we could actually work together to make something like that happen, but we're so segregated as a country, it makes it difficult to see how that's actually going to work out.
The progress has been slow. We've been saying that. I'm sure that there's people in the 60s that never thought that they would be here today to see this, where it's at. It is slow, but I think it was our second or third episode of Royal Grown Radio where we had a guest on that was born and raised in Virginia. And I think we made a comment that Virginia would probably be the last state of the 50 to go legal. And boy, do I feel like a dumbass because I'm pretty sure I'm the one that said that.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And like Mississippi's on the verge right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well.
Is another
and
one.
Who would have ever imagined?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's when you think about these, deeply entrenched, original colonies with Virginia, there's some old boys mentality there, and it's nice to see that emerging into change. But we just got to get the neighbors down in North Carolina and over in Tennessee and kind of get them to see the benefits that it brings to the community.
Yeah, I mean, through the 90s, Eastern or Western Carolina, Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern Tennessee were, their own sort of Emerald Triangle in the Appalachians. So it would be nice to get to play at some point.
Let's get the hills of Kentucky into producing cannabis again, because that's been a hotbed of cannabis production in the East. Moonshiners and cannabis growers, it goes hand in hand. Those fuck the government hill people.
Yeah, be a good special on the Discovery Channel.
I would watch it.
Exactly. It'll be on one day. I assure you. I'd be more fascinated to see how the hemp versus cannabis plays out in places like that, because I know that there are places, Humboldt being one of them, where they put the kibosh down on any kind of hemp growing because the cannabis market itself is so strong, and there's a lot of fear of their contamination, which is justified.
In our market, nobody's growing seeded hemp. Everybody's growing seedless female, either feminized genetics. I think some of the strongest feminized genetics out there are in the hemp industry. I've grown 4 years consecutively with no hermaphrodites or males, and
Sweet.
that is super impressive. So these two markets, that's going at a scale thing, and then our side of the industry is more of a fine-tuned craft thing, but we're making great strides with the capability to do acres and acres of feminized seed and auto flower stuff, and just get the data and research and fine-tune consistency in genetics. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the fiber market, but if that was ever to explode, we would need decortication facilities within 20 miles of each fiber farm to make it, logistically or production capabilities make sense. So I don't foresee that until there's a big movement of, subsidies or programs to encourage decortication and processing facilities for fiber. I think that's still a ways away, but that is truly exciting as well. And I think it'll have to be, regions go after that, and other regions go after female flowers, or like Oregon CBD is light years above people in genetics. They've created genetics that will not pollinate. Even if there's a seeded out farm, that they are making strides into, where open pollination is not even a threat.
So it's sterile females, essentially.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's
cool. I didn't know that.
And I like what you said about, different markets and different regions are going to emerge at different rates. And you see like Illinois again, and they're starting to see some traction on decortification and actually processing the fiber. You got the guys at Heartland Hemp and KLR Genetics, and they're really doing a good job of actually trying to vertically integrate. And it's a slow process, but you see them cultivating large scale smokable hemp, smokable CBD flower essentially, and also going for larger scale fiber production. And I think you're going to see that sort of model emerging where they're going to privatize and vertically integrate for their own, processing of fiber in-house so they can farm on site, process on site, and move directly, ideally, to an on-site or neighboring fiber processing or textile facility to actually produce wares from the fibers. But you're right, it's got to be so local to make it cost effective.
This is a hemp shirt. I want to wear hemp stuff every day. I want to wear cannabis clothes.
Well, they actually are making really fine hemp clothing now. We were talking about that in a past episode where for years we all wanted to wear it. But then you put it on, you're like, Jesus, I look like a goofball. But that's a really nice, finely designed shirt.
Yeah, this Patagonia, like they're killing it with. They got hemp khakis and hemp nice shirts and stuff.
See, that part of the industry I feel like is so wide open. I mean, there's so much room for this plant to seriously take over the planet on such a positive level when you're dealing with plastics and fuels and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much potential for this thing to just completely explode.
But again, like you were saying, Sean, these are global companies. Patagonia, that's a global company. They're not reliant on US. And so, tying back to that, like, are you seeing the same vigor down in Mexico and Colombia for the hemp industry?
For sure. Down in Colombia, the focus has been more on the THC. Just for right now, they can only really export extracts. So everyone's pushing for terps and pushing to extract and then export that. But they're importing hemp from Canada in Colombia to make clothing. So it's very funny when you look at it like that, like you were just talking about localization. You'll see that happen more, but part of the qualm or the stopping point is always legislature, So if those things can change, like on a local region in the southeast, we'll be making, milling, and creating textiles all in the same place that we're growing hemp. But I think globally that will start to change too.
A lot of their, the sparkle in their eye lights up with the hemp side of things when you get into bioremediation of soil.
Big time.
Sucking up toxins of overused and overproduced farmland and just the areas of our past that we've polluted some of our farmland in areas of the country. So you see a lot of interest in that down there, and it's exciting. A tropical climate and a South American climate would be perfect for fiber production and stuff as well.
And about 40% of the land in Mexico is completely contaminated from herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer use or overuse. So they can't even really grow corn in the places they were 10, 20 years ago because the land is so fallow. But to pull up the contaminants, starting a hemp program to bioremediate that soil, you can get 20 to 30% of that land back and then be able to use it for agriculture again. That's huge.
Yeah, it's such an effective bioaccumulator, and you can get rid of a lot of the tissue that holds all of those toxins and still use the fiber and still use some of that plant in an effective way, remediate the land, grow something of value, and actually move forward in, a conscious way to improve the land again. I think that's insane and fantastic, and we got to spread the word about this sort of thing.
Yeah, and like all of us standing in this room, that's kind of where we started with the industry. Maybe we started growing weed because we like to smoke weed, but at the same time, there's always that connection between the earth and the plant and yourself. We didn't start growing weed to make money, maybe, but that was just an added bonus.
It was a quick second.
Yeah, for sure. But the whole point of having ranches up in Humboldt and being out in the woods and living in a tent and being connected with the plant was because that was the experience we wanted. We didn't want to just rip up the land, plant in the ground, and then maybe not grow there again 2 years later because it's destroyed,
Yeah, it wasn't out of convenience or wanting to live in a lap of luxury. Like you said, we were living in tents on the side of mountains, far from actual good water sources. You're pulling from springs and having to check your water lines every day, and like really living inland, off the land, in the middle of nowhere. So many of these people built from the ground up with empty 40-acre parcels with just an old logging road.
Yep.
And
you had to learn how to cut wood and build water boxes and trap pests and rodents. I mean, you had to learn everything from the ground up to be able to pull this off successfully.
And it wasn't living in the lap of luxury. Like, we weren't all cannabis ballers kicking our feet up on the side of the hot tub watching the plants grow. That's not at all what it was like.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Sustainability and the focus on getting there is, what drives a lot of us. Royal Gold with the sustainable media, and then hydroponic cultivation. I think that is one fuel that's always going to continue to burn in this industry and keep the fire going, because that gives us all purpose to continue to better ourselves. So
100%. And like what Cutting Edge is doing to innovate more organic liquid fertilizers for hydroponic applications, and using sustainable mediums like cocoa to kind of create a balance of, this is a soil type cultivation process, but it's all hydroponic. We're doing all we can to minimize our water consumption, to minimize water contamination, nutrient runoff, nutrient outflow. We want the plant to consume everything we're putting into it and not be wasting any of these resources. So
yeah, and we've been preaching foliar applications of organic additives for 20 years now, and it's finally catching on.
Finally.
The people are starting to understand the plant takes 80 to 200 times as much nutrition through the stomata, and that keeps your reservoir clean. The plant's getting the available nutrients. You can add organics in. Every day we're making waves, and it's nice to see some of these techniques catching on in commercial application scenes.
Man, I feel like we could go on all day. We've got another little while here. We've got some other guests about to join us. We got the THC girls, the High Country girls from Florida, coming to join us here next.
Fun.
We'll have to get you guys back on and have more conversation, at a different time, maybe in the studio, where we can dig deeper into some of these
For
nuances.
sure. And we'll get Uncle John to come out too, and we can all tell the stories.
That sounds great.
For
Man,
sure.
thanks so much for joining us,
thank
guys.
you guys.
Yeah, thank you
this
guys,
is a
for
pleasure.
sure.
Thank you.
Always good to just hang out with my boys,
yeah, no doubt,
And I'll be
man.
seeing you guys all week for sure. We'll have a great time.
Love you, my brother.
Love you, man.